welcome to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mideles, and I am your host here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of Deep South Texas. Got a great program lined up for you today. Our El Paso correspondent, Julian Resendiz, is going to be joining us in just a few moments to talk about a few different subjects that he's been monitoring in his area of responsibility for BorderReport.com and Border Report Live. So we'll get to him in just a moment. But of course, as always, let's go ahead and take a look at what's trending across the border, starting with the Trump administration halting all asylum decisions and pausing issuing visas for people traveling on Afghan passports. Now, the move comes after one National Guard member was killed and a second was critically wounded last week near the White House. A 29-year-old Afghan national who worked with the CIA during the war in Afghanistan is facing a first-degree murder charge. Our Washington correspondent Basil John has the latest from D.C.
President Donald Trump said at the end of last week he would suspend immigration from third world countries, and he doubled down on that statement over the weekend.
The Trump administration is halting all asylum decisions nationwide, just days after two National Guard members were shot in Washington, D.C. by an Afghan national.
People that shouldn't be in our country this way.
The administration says asylum admissions from unstable countries were too risky.
No time limit, but it could be a long time. We don't want those people. Do you understand that?
The pause applies to all nationalities, including Afghans brought in under Operation Allies Welcome. Officers can still interview applicants, but can't issue any decisions. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said on ABC This Week this wouldn't have happened with stronger vetting.
If they're coming from a country that's not stable and doesn't have a government that can help you vet them, that we shouldn't allow it.
On NBC's Meet the Press, Arizona Democratic Senator Mark Kelly called the freeze politically driven and overbroad.
They don't want brown people coming to the United States, and I find that disturbing.
Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen agreed.
It is outrageous and unfair to try to punish an entire class of people for the evil acts of one person.
The administration has also launched a review of asylum cases approved under President Biden, calling the system broken and promising new security checks before moving forward with cases again. Reporting in Washington, I'm Basil John.
Also happening across the border today, around 250 federal border agents plan to begin a months-long immigration crackdown in southeast Louisiana and into Mississippi, being dubbed Operation Swamp Sweep. Now, we've been telling you a little bit about this, and we are officially here. Now, the operation led by Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bovino aims to arrest 5,000 people in New Orleans, which is a Democratic-run city. Bovino has led similar aggressive operations in other blue cities like Chicago and Los Angeles as well. Republican Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry supports the federal agents, but many in New Orleans are on edge. Some residents are preparing for the crackdown by staying indoors and attending rights-related workshops. The deployment is the latest federal immigration operation targeting a Democratic-run city as President Donald Trump's administration pursues its mass deportation agenda. Also happening, lawmakers from both parties have launched congressional reviews of U.S. military strikes against vessels suspected of smuggling drugs. They're citing reports that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth issued a verbal order to kill defenseless survivors of a U.S. missile attack on a boat in the Caribbean Sea. Virginia Democratic Senator Tim Kaine said, quote, "This rises to the level of a war crime if it's true." End quote. Ohio Republican Representative Mike Turner noted that leaders of the Armed Services Committee in both the House and Senate have opened investigations. President Donald Trump confirmed on Sunday that he had recently spoke with Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and is weighing whether to carry out strikes on the Venezuelan mainland. And that's a look at what's trending across the border. Time now to bring in our El Paso correspondent, Julian Resendiz. And Julian, you got a couple things to talk about today, but the first one is a very interesting one, and that is the use of drones along the border, something you've been following for some time now. Fill us in.
Really good to be back in the show. A couple of weeks ago, I had the privilege of being in a conference with security experts from the United States who have been looking very closely at how criminal organizations in Mexico, as well as in Colombia and Venezuela, are integrating the use of drones into their operations. Now, just to give you some background, drones have become a very important player in international armed conflicts. Of course, we know that Ukraine pretty much pioneered the use of drones as part of military strategy in trying to repel the much superior, numerically superior Russian forces. Drones are capable nowadays of tracking a moving target, whether it be a platoon of soldiers trying to run into the forest, or even a military vehicle such as a tank or a jeep. And they have become quite the cutting edge of what's going on in today's battlefield. The bad news is that Mexican organizations are increasingly using drones. I have some numbers for you. In 2023, this became a government-recognized problem in Mexico when Mexico recorded 35 known drone attacks. They're coming from the cartels, specifically from the Jalisco cartel, which is using these drones in rural settings, sending them over to not just enemy camps in the mountains or in forests, but in populations in cities and towns that they believe are friendly to some of their opponents. I have been watching several of these attacks on social media. I wish I could share them with you, but because of copyright issues, we cannot. But let me tell you that they do strike terror in populations. And like I said, this is an increasing trend. Now, when we look at other countries, specifically Colombia and Venezuela, I can tell you that the first cartel or criminal organization drug attack took place in the summer of 2024. It was quite a shock to the whole nation to know that what was happening in Ukraine was now starting to happen in a very limited fashion in their country. But then, fast forward 1 year, 2025, and so far there have been 50 drone attacks recorded in Colombia. Over there, it's primarily criminal organizations, some of them former guerrilla movements, now trafficking in cocaine primarily, who use them on defense forces, whether it be the Colombian military or any other organized police force out there in Colombia. So to recap, yeah, the cartels and criminal organizations in South America are starting to use these drones as part of their operations to terrorize population, to attack their enemies, and also in some cases to attack the government.
Now, we know, and we've been seeing images from, I believe it's Mexico's military and their drones. We saw a little bit from the Texas Department of Public Safety's drones, and we saw a little bit from the Texas Military Department's drone usage along the border. In Mexico, you know, knowing the history of some of these cartel organizations kind of recruiting high-level special operators, things like that, from within the Mexican military, is there any concern on the other side of the border that they're maybe training the future of the very people that they're trying to prevent?
Well, what I can tell you, Rudy, is that these drones are being used by the cartels to inflict damage, not just to surveil, like you mentioned Texas. Texas uses drones to surveil. The cartels, the criminals, they use them to attack their enemies. Now, as far as former military, we already have reported that there's a lot of former Mexican military working for the cartels. The Zetas cartel, which is now the Northeast cartel, it was pretty much formed by its core was ex-Mexican military. Now, there's an interesting trend that I can report to you as far as what's going on with the drone usage by the cartels in Mexico, and that is that they are recruiting not just ex-military, but also teenagers and young people, highly skilled in computer and technology, so they can pilot these drones. And this is like moving on to the next phase of how the cartels plan to use the drones. So far, primarily a few attacks when we have a drone, maybe a commercial drone that costs $500 to $1,000, flying over a city hall or a main plaza in a town they believe is controlled by a rival gang, and dropping a grenade or dropping an incendiary device, doing some symbolic damage. What comes next, according to the experts that I heard from a couple of weeks ago, what comes next is that the improvised explosive devices are substituted for more complex, more damaging, more deadly projectiles, such as we have seen in Ukraine. And that's what they are afraid of. Now, you mentioned the Mexican government. I can tell you that not just the Mexican government, but also the government of Colombia are rushing to catch up. They have both formed anti-drone brigades. The ones in Mexico primarily rely jammers, electronic jammers. They look like machine guns, or more like the water guns that you see at the swimming pool. That's what they look like. But they're electronic jammers that are capable of disabling a drone that they see in flight. So that's a defense mechanism. In Colombia, the military is trying to get ahead of the curve, and their brigade, their drone brigade, actually flies a lot of drones with defensive capabilities. That is not only for surveillance, but also for electronic jamming. And both countries are now experimenting. They're now relying on partners such as the United States to give them advice as to what technology is best to use to prevent this from escalating, in the case of Mexico, from just shooting at rivals or trying to bomb rivals in small towns, into committing outright acts of terrorism or attacking the federal forces. In Colombia, we're talking about a much more complex scenario. Criminals there have extensive guerrilla experience, paramilitary experience. So what they can do with those drones is pretty scary. Now, there's some good news and some bad news. Despite their very aggressive move toward drone warfare on the part of the cartels and the criminals, so far, their expertise is nothing compared to what Ukraine is doing. And this is good and bad, because in the case of Colombian criminals, when they tried to attack a police station in a rural town, they ended up hitting a neighborhood. Just because of lack of skill, lack of control, the drones ended up hitting a neighborhood, according to one expert in the region, and that forced 450 people to pretty much flee their homes because they didn't know what was going on, or if the attacks were aimed at them, or if they were going to stop, or what. Also, in the case of Colombia, we are seeing a more integrated use of these drones. I've heard stories from the experts about former guerrilla groups, commandos, going off to the drug fields on a raft on the river, and they have a drone watching out 200 yards ahead of them, and they have another drone behind them 200 yards. So that's pretty sophisticated as far as what's going on.
Yeah, almost using this technology as their reconnaissance units, as a security unit in the rear as well. You know, one thing I did want to add is what's interesting about these drones. Let's say you take away the armament of them, whether it be an improvised explosive device, as you were just talking about, or more sophisticated weaponry, perhaps some sort of rocket-propelled grenades, or even just dropping a grenade. These things can inflict some pretty big damage by themselves if they wanted to just fly them into groups of people or even infrastructure. Let's say electrical units that are providing power to, whether it's just residents of a city or even military communications or military sites. So it's very interesting and a little bit scary to hear about this from you. We appreciate your reporting on this, Julian, but stick around, because when we come back, Julian's got some more to talk about. So stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 1 minute. And welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles, bringing back in now our El Paso correspondent, Julian Resendiz, to talk about something that's happened before, and it's happened again recently here along the U.S.-Mexico border, and that is truckers forming a blockade. Tell us about this most recent event, Julian.
Absolutely, Rudy. But before I talk about the farmers, I wanted to make one final point about the drones. The obvious question, the elephant in the room, is if the Mexican cartels now are using drones for offensive capabilities to effect attacks, what does that represent in terms of danger to us over here on the U.S. side? Here in El Paso, we're right across the border from Juarez, where not one but two cartels and several organized criminal gangs operate. So what is the risk of them using one of these drones to attack American security forces, such as the Border Patrol, or inflicting terror in ports of entry? What I am told, or what I hear from the experts, is that that is always a danger, that's always a possibility. We already have air reports saying that there's been alerts among U.S. law enforcement about the possible use of drones against the Army units guarding the border or the Border Patrol. What I can tell you so far is that we immediately looked into that possibility on both sides of the border. What I can tell you is that on the Mexican side, that would be something that the criminals would do only as a last resort. Let's say that they're trying to prevent the arrest of their leader, or they are trying to seek his release. But that would be a last resort tactic to be used, because the immediate response, not just from the U.S. government, but also from the Mexican government, would be very, very strong. So the cartels pretty much know their limits. I've often talked about criminals in Mexico kind of observing a gentleman's agreement on how far they can go. So it's always possible, but at this point, not likely, just because of the repercussions that it would bring on whichever criminal organization dare to do this. That is, attack on the U.S. side.
All right. Well, thank you for that addition there, Julian. I didn't mean to cut you off earlier, but moving on now to this blockade and the farmers on the other side of the border. Fill us in on that.
Rudy, last week we had a very troubling situation here at the U.S.-Mexico border, not just at the El Paso Juarez Strait corridor, but also out there in Arizona and in several other places close to the northern border. And what it is that a number of farmers, Mexican farmers, took their tractors, took their pickups, took other heavy equipment, and they blockaded roads leading to the U.S. border, as well as the Mexican side of commercial ports of entry. This was quite crippling, with losses up in the tens of millions as far as merchandise that did not get to the U.S. in time for its use. And the bottom line on this is that Mexico is trying to pass a new water law. The water law has to do with reclaiming its water supply, which has been cited by experts as one of the reasons why Mexico has not fulfilled its water debt to the U.S. In the words of one U.S. official or former U.S. official, they're not 100% in control of their own water. So the Mexican Congress is looking at this law, and that had some unintended collateral damage because in trying to reclaim ownership of all of its water resources, the proposal was to take away some of the irrigation rights from the farmers. Now, let me clarify. According to the Mexican law, farmers who dig the wells, who go through the process, they are the owners of their water supply, but only as far as what they can use to produce crops. The rest, they are supposed to either yield or sell back to Mexican government institutions. So the Mexican government wanted to close this loophole, this perceived loophole, and that just sent farmers into a frenzy. Not only are they saying don't touch our water rights, but they brought up all kinds of concerns, including safety. They say, well, when we send our produce from the farms to the city, very often our trucks are hijacked by criminals. So they had several concerns, and the result was that what you see on the screen. What you see is trucks that normally would come in, cross from Mexico to the U.S., were halted. This represented not only the tremendous losses as far as merchandise not getting to the U.S. on time, but also, and this is a new reporting that I did just today, it also prompted some maquiladoras, some U.S.-run plants in Juarez, to make the expense of sending their merchandise through cargo airplanes from Juarez to the Midwestern United States. Some of those flights cost the factories an extra $70,000, $90,000, and in one case, $210,000 because of the blockade. Now, I can report to you that this blockade has concluded. The farmers were able to reach an agreement, a tentative agreement, because I have seen nothing signed so far yet, that their water rights will be respected. Not only that, but they will be able to pass on these water rights to their immediate family, to their children, so they can continue producing food crops and other type of crops.
Now, I just wanted to clarify. You said it was about $10 million in merchandise that wasn't able to cross, something around that number, correct?
No, I was talking about the trucks. My story mentions the trucks. Yeah, around 10,000 trucks just here in this
Oh,
corridor.
I'm sorry. I
this
misunderstood.
corridor.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, the amount of losses we're not able to quantify it yet because these are private companies. They don't report it to the media. But yeah, upwards of 10,000 trucks just here on this part of the border were unable to cross. Now, this morning I spoke to an industry official in Mexico, and he tells me that they really dodged a bullet, not just by the conflict being resolved after only 4 days, but also because of the Thanksgiving holiday in the United States. What that meant is that some American factories that use assembled goods from Mexico were not operating part of the week. So that kind of saved them from much bigger losses had this thing continued.
Yeah, and I did want to kind of put that into perspective again. Our Sandra Sanchez, our South Texas correspondent, it was about 3 years ago when Title 42 was coming to an end. And at that point, Texas Governor Greg Abbott had increased the amount of inspections as trucks were coming over the border here in the state of Texas. And just kind of going over, some of the math, economic losses when those inspections were happening to every single truck that was coming over from Reynosa into Pharr, the city of Pharr, economic losses were estimated at $202 million per day. This went on for a couple days, totaling over $1 billion. And that is just one port of entry at the city of Pharr, $202 million a day. Now, this blockade was happening across several different ports of entry. So I'm sure, like you said, it's, these are private companies and their numbers won't be reported, but hopefully we'll get some kind of number from these different ports of entry as time goes on. So the economic impact that, it doesn't seem like a lot, right? When you're thinking about, it was just a couple days. It doesn't, but it's sort of like when everything was happening at those ports a couple years ago when we're talking about Los Angeles, Houston, all these ships waiting, it causes a backlog, right? And some of those products are perishable products. So some of these losses can just never be recouped. So hopefully this new agreement comes to stand. We appreciate you joining us today, Julian. Some great reporting here, as always, on Border Report Live. El Paso correspondent Julian Resendiz joining us. Stay with us when we come back. We've got a little bit more to tell you about. Border Report Live is back in 1 minute. Welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. After years of delays, work on the new Otay Mesa East Port of Entry in Southern California has finally begun with a crushing operation. They're using excess rubble taken from San Diego Airport's terminal project to build the base of the new border crossing. Our Salvador Rivera has the story.
After years of being dormant, the Otay Mesa East Port of Entry project is now buzzing with activity.
We just began construction on November 3rd for the new port of entry at Otay Mesa East.
Maria Rodriguez Molina is the Director of Mega Projects for the San Diego Association of Governments. The agency, along with the California Department of Transportation, are overseeing the construction of the new border crossing. Right now, a large portion of the work involves this rubble that came from the Terminal 1 Airport project. The boulders are placed in a grinder, turning the rocks into a base that will be used throughout the site.
It's concrete. We'll crush it and use it as a base under the buildings and under the structural section of the roads. There are about 100 trucks a day coming in for the next 3 to 5 months. The material gets unloaded here. Behind me, you can see there is a crushing operation that gets taken throughout the site in the locations for the new buildings. Water gets added, it gets very compacted, and that's the new base for the buildings.
According to Rodriguez, it's 100,000 cubic yards in demolition materials that will be recycled here, generating huge savings for taxpayers while protecting the environment.
It helps reducing vehicle mile travels, it helps reducing emissions, and it helps material not ending up in a landfill.
As for the port of entry itself, it is expected to be done by late 2028 or into 2029. From Otay Mesa, Salvador Rivera, Border Report.
And before we go, we have some breaking news out of Chicago, where the son of notorious Mexican drug kingpin El Chapo has pleaded guilty to U.S. drug trafficking charges. He is the second of El Chapo's son facing similar charges to enter a plea deal. Prosecutors allege Joaquin Guzman Lopez, along with his brother Ovidio Guzman Lopez, known as the Chapitos or Little Chapos, ran a faction of the Sinaloa cartel that exported fentanyl to the United States. This is a developing story. Again, breaking news just into my hands a few moments ago, so we'll cover more of this on the next episode.